We're living in the most momentous and dangerous of times. I do not need to describe the grave nature of the threats that we face or the devastating consequences that we will have to endure.
The world in which Ghana exists today, as I begin this presidency, is not the same world in which we have lived under other presidencies.
Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Opon. If you are seeing this video, it means you are starting this channel with me. And I am so excited. I am building this channel because of you. So whenever you see my channel, Africa in the World, please subscribe, like, share, make your comments, because we are going to build this channel together. Africa in the World is going to be like no other channel you have seen, especially for the African people. My reason for creating this channel is the fact that we have so many YouTube channels across Africa which are really doing well, impacting lives. But I have been trying as much as I can to find YouTube channels that deal specifically with the big issues happening across the globe, with the big issues happening in global affairs, and how these issues affect Africa, your Africa, my Africa, our Africa, so that this will guide us in decision making and help us in trying to understand the world we live in. But I have been searching without success to find these YouTube channels, these social media channels, which deal with such big issues in Africa. I come from Ghana. I know in Ghana, from morning till midnight, you can watch many different political shows. You can sit by the radio, but you can hardly find 1% of their content daily dealing with the global issues, global affairs, and how they are affecting the African people, the Ghanaian people. I live in Canada, and every day when you watch the news, you know the media is so poised about talking about global issues because it affects the lives of the very people in the country. This is the reason why I have thought that no, something must be done about this, and Africa and the world should be the solution. I am not the wisest person. I am not the one who can deal with all the global issues and how they affect Africa. But over the past 15 years, I have spent so much time watching global news, trying to understand what is happening around the world and how that affects our Africa. So I do a lot of watching of global news. I read a lot of news about global affairs, and I try to analyze. I try to synthesize. I try to come out with interpretations about how these global issues affect Africa, your Africa, my Africa. I have been wanting to share my opinions about this, but I thought I have not found the courage yet to come publicly to begin to discuss these top nuts or to crack these top nuts which affect your life and mine in Africa. Since NATO's invasion of Libya and the killing of Muammar al-Gaddafi, the Libyan president, I have never lost my guard watching and trying to understand what is happening around the world and how that affects you as an African and me. When Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014, I read a lot of news. I watched Al Jazeera. I watched other TV stations across the world, international news, portals, just so I could understand what was happening there. During the COVID-19, I was in Ghana at the time. I kept watching and looking at how the world was rushing, galloping, so that it could come out with various, antidotes to the COVID-19 pandemic. I remember when the antidotes were found, the inequalities against Africa in the sharing of the antidote. I was watching when in 2020, Ethiopia attacked Tigray, their neighbors. For 2 years, Ethiopian army was in battle with the Tigrayans in Africa. I was watching when in 2022, Russia once again, unprovoked, attacked the Ukrainian people, and how resilient the Ukrainian people were in the fight for their sovereignty. I have been watching how Ukraine over the past 3 years has fought gallantly. So I know so many African people, because of how the West has in the past treated Africa through colonization and post-colonial imperialism, neo-colonial imperialism. Because of some of these things, I know how so many Africans are indifferent about what is happening in Ukraine, or even some people, many people support Russia because they know that Ukraine is attempting to be on the side of the West. I know. I have been watching, I have been speaking with people. People have been asking me my opinions about some of these things. I have been sharing my opinions because I have been reading about the war. I have dug so deep into the background of the war, what has happened previously, and how that affects what is happening in Ukraine today. I have been doing all these things just so I could understand the situation and understand how our Africa, or how this impacts our Africa. On October 7, 2023, we know the Hamas group attacked Israel, and Israel had to organize and come back strongly against Hamas. Israel had to fight the Houthis. Israel has been fighting Hezbollah. Israel has, at a point in time, even been exchanging, missiles with Iran, which is the country supporting Hamas, the Houthis, and the Hezbollah. I have been watching how Assad Syria fell, and how the current military leadership is still fighting the remnants of Assad's army. And the world is in a very precarious state. The world is not at peace. And I will show you briefly what is happening around the world. It is so interesting how the US under President Donald Trump has just started to rewind the world order and to create new world orders. Now, Canada, a country which has been a very good ally to the United States, does not even feel safe anymore, because US has been talking about, taking Canada becoming the 51st state of the United States. This is, something that the United States president is perpetrating against Canada. And now, in the attempt to achieve this, the United States, by the president Donald Trump, has started a trade war with Canada, so that Canada's economy will fall into fragments, so that Canada will be on its knees before the US, and the US will have the chance to integrate Canada into the United States. Can you imagine something of this nature could ever happen in this world? But it is happening right before our eyes. And now, what is surprising, that news become dead news just within the twinkle of an eye. Many things are happening in our world. European Union have been discussing seriously how it should take its own security in its own hands. I will show you a couple of videos and you will understand what is happening in global security. European Union is saying that for over 70 years now, they have been relaxing, thinking that there is peace in this world. Therefore, they have been relying on the US for security support. But now, under Donald Trump, the US president is saying, we do not have any security guarantees for Europe any longer. And now, Europe is crumbling. Europe has now declared that they are going to get rearmed with over $800 billion investment in their in their arms industry so that they know that their security is assured. I have been thinking, what is Africa doing? Canada is now, trying whatever it can to secure its borders, to secure itself from U.S. invasion or U.S. onslaught on Canada, just so it could integrate Canada into the United States. What is Africa doing about its own security? I am asking, is Africa sleeping while the world is galloping? The world is in the race, in security, in economics, in trade and market, in healthcare, in everything. Is Africa sleeping while the world is racing, while the world is galloping ahead? I feel so sad when I wake up to see things happening around the world. And when I watch things happening in Africa, I become so sad. You see, I am inclined to believe that our media in Africa is not talking about global issues, especially in my country, Ghana. It's not talking about global issues because leadership, governments know how powerful people will become, how creative people will become, how analyzing and interpretative people will become when they get to understand these global affairs and how they affect our world as Africans. Therefore, they have no interest in letting people know about what is happening around the world. Most of our African leaders thrive through lies. So if we know about what is happening out there, we will make the right choices. And that is what they do not want. This channel, Africa and the World, has come to be the eye that will be watching for Africa, so that you and I will get to understand what is happening in our Africa, in your Africa, in my Africa, in our Africa, and how these are impacted by global affairs, so that we can understand how to make the right choices as a people. Listen to what President John Dramani Mahama said about the happenings in the world, in global economies, so that you can understand that I am not the only one saying that things are changing so fast in the world, and Africa must not be sleeping.
The world in which Ghana exists today, as I begin this presidency, is not the same world in which we have lived under other presidencies. There are tensions and conflicts that have not previously existed between nations. These tensions and conflicts place pressure on alliances to decide where we will support. There's a seismic shift happening within the system of global economic dominance. Whereas the G7 nations, United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan once provided the highest percentage of the world's GDP, over the last decade, that number has been steadily dropping. However, the combined total of the GDP of the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, UAE, their GDP has been consistently increasing. In 2023, for instance, the G7's combined total of world GDP was 30%. But by 2029, that number is predicted to drop to 27%. In 2023, the BRICS percentage of world GDP was 37.3%. And so what does this mean to us in Ghana?
So now, you just listened to the video and you understand that I am not just saying that the world is changing or the world has changed significantly. It is true that the world is never the same as it used to be. You just heard it. Let's watch this video together so that you have a feel of what is happening in our world today and how these changes are affecting every single person on the planet, including Africans, you and me.
We're living in the most momentous and dangerous of times. I do not need to describe the grave nature of the threats that we face or the devastating consequences that we will have to endure if those threats would come to pass, because the question is no longer whether Europe's security is threatened in a very real way or whether Europe should shoulder more of its responsibility for its own security. In truth, we have long known the answers to those questions. The real question in front of us is whether Europe is prepared to act as decisively as the situation dictates, and whether Europe is ready and able to act with speed and with the ambition that is needed. In the various meetings in the last few weeks, most recently 2 days ago in London, the answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament, and Europe is ready to massively boost its defense spending, both to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
So you just heard the President of the European Union saying that we are living in the most precarious times of the world. That is deep. So my question is, how is Africa taking our security into our own hands? Are we planning? What is the plan? Where is the evidence of plan that we are planning for our own security? Now, Europe is arming, China is arming, Taiwan is arming, Ukraine is arming, Russia is arming, US is arming, Turkey is arming. Where is Africa? South Korea is arming, North Korea is arming. In fact, Canada is arming. What is Africa doing about our security? That is the question I am asking you, the leaders. What is Africa doing about our security? How are we taking our security into our own hands? Africa must not be sleeping at this precarious time of the world's history. Africa must be awake and acting. Africa must be awake. Africa must rise. Africa must rise. Now, watch another video about what European Union has agreed concerning what they expect to do in the very near future in terms of their security.
It's now 70 years ago that Alcide de Gasperi said, "We don't just need peace among us, but to build a common defense, this is not to threaten or conquer, but to deter any attack from the outside driven by hatred against a united Europe. This is the task of our generation." End of quote. 70 years have gone by, but our generation is faced with the very same task, because peace in our union can no longer be taken for granted. We are facing a crisis of European security, but we know that it is in crises that Europe has always been built. So this is a moment for peace through strength. This is the moment for a common defense effort. And at the European Council, I saw a level of consensus on European defense which is not just unprecedented, but was completely unthinkable only a few weeks ago. There is a new understanding that we must think differently and act accordingly. We have started to mobilize Europe's massive resources, and in the coming weeks and months, more courage will be necessary, and other difficult choices await us. Honourable members, the European security order is being shaken, and so many of our illusions are being shattered. After the end of the Cold War, some believed that Russia could be integrated in Europe's economic and security architecture. Others hoped that we could rely indefinitely on America's full protection. And so we lowered our guard. We cut our defense spending from routinely averaging more than 3.5% to less than half of that. We thought we were enjoying a peace dividend, but in reality, we were just running a security deficit. The time of illusions is over now. Europe is called to take greater charge of its own defense, not in some distant future, but already today, not with incremental steps, but with the courage that the situation requires. We need a surge in European defense, and we need it now. We need it first and foremost because of the situation in Ukraine. There is the urgent need to fill the gaps in Ukraine's military supplies and to provide Ukraine with solid security guarantees. But this moment of reckoning isn't only about Ukraine. It is about all of Europe and our entire continent's security. Putin has proven time and again that he is a hostile neighbor. He cannot be trusted. He can only be deterred. And we know that Russia's military complex is outproducing ours. If we look at the military expenditure in real terms, the Kremlin is spending more than all of Europe combined. Europe's production is still on a lower order of magnitude. And beyond traditional capabilities, the range of threats that we face is getting broader by the day. I know that the European Parliament argued for years that Europe needs to do more, and you were absolutely right. And this is more dangerous today, the era we live in, so Europe really needs to step up. And this is the goal of the plan that I presented to leaders last week. Its logic is very simple. We want to pull every single financial lever we have to strengthen and fast-track our defense production. With the Rearmed Europe plan, we can mobilize up to 800 billion euros. So, honourable members, let me focus on some of the main...
Did you hear that? I think you were shocked. Europe is going to rearm itself with 800 billion euros. Now, if Europe is arming, US is arming, China is arming, Russia is arming, Turkey is arming, and all these nations want a part of Africa. As we have seen them, they are taking Africa for granted, seeing Africa like a cake which they should all take a part out of. If they are all rearming, what is Africa doing? Is Africa not threatened by this rearmament of these powerful giants across the world? Will Africa not awake and act in its own defense as well? Let's think about this. Remember, the channel you are watching is Africa in the World, and we are going to talk big issues that is happening on the global field, but affecting Africa in one way or the other. When you see my videos on Africa and the World, please subscribe, because we are going to build this channel together, you and me. The channel is for us. I am building it for you so that we can understand what is happening in our world and how it affects us. So subscribe, like, comment, and share. And let's make constructive analysis of the things that are happening in our world and affecting our Africa. See you again.